where if that pattern of coming to Jesus is in place, then when life really overwhelms us, when we feel like we're drowning, when that depression, that anxiety, those things hit, we can rely on a pattern that's already in place of coming to Jesus. Hey Grace family, and welcome back to our midweek check-in. So last Sunday we started the genre of laments as we continue our walk through Psalm series. And so we got to look at chapter 31. It's a Psalm of David, and broke that down into 3 sections and had a lot of lessons that we could kind of take away from that. We see him turning to God and just praying and just saying, God, will you be this for me? I know this is who you are. Therefore, will you lead me and guide me? And we see that section where he's just bringing his complaints before the Lord. This is how I feel. And we saw those emotions of grief and distress and sorrow and even kind of being abandoned by his friends. There's so much going on in there. But as laments usually turn out at the end, there's kind of this shift from the negative emotion to the positive. And that last section of praise that we really called, these are reasons that we can trust God. So David kind of made that turn for himself. All this is going on, but I choose to trust you. And then he just listed off some goodness about who God is. So there was a lot of things we could learn from that, a lot of lessons that we could apply to our own life. But we ended the morning talking about 3 points of application from the very end of the chapter. And there's something along the lines of to love the Lord. We talked about that as the first and greatest commandment. To let God be our strength, and then to put our hope in Him and in Him alone. And kind of the point of that, I made a quick reference that if these patterns are in place, if we're doing these things in our life, no matter at what stage, when the lamenting needs to take place, when the hardship comes, when the pain hits, then we'll be able to set ourselves up well, to lament well and bring our complaints before God in a right way, to let those raw emotions out, but not let those emotions to steer us into sin or to turn us into something in the world. Rather, they turn us to God and a deeper trust in Him. And so it's kind of with those patterns and things in mind that I wanted to read a verse to you this week. It's a really well-known verse. I think I've used it a couple times in the midweeks. I just shared it for Mother's Day. But think of it with creating a pattern in our lifestyle and the way we live our life so that we'll be able to lament well. And this is Matthew 11, verses 28 and 29. This is the NIV. It says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." And it's a really well-known verse, but my challenge, my encouragement for this midweek is to let that be a pattern in your life. Through the good, through the bad, through the hard, through the easy, every moment, every season of life, come to Jesus. If life is good, come to Him and thank Him. Life is hard, come to Him, rest in Him. Create that pattern. And again, it's kind of that pattern that we talked about with those application points, where if that pattern of coming to Jesus is in place, then when life really overwhelms us, when we feel like we're drowning, when that depression, that anxiety, those things hit, we can rely on a pattern that's already in place of coming to Jesus, or patterns like the applications to love Him, find our strength in Him and hope in Him. And when that's there, again, when life hits hard, we'll be able to use lament appropriately. And our raw emotions, all the negative things that bring about those emotions in life, those can steer us to God rather than steer us away from Him. So that's just my encouragement for you. Create that pattern, and then we'll be able to just really lament well because of that. Looking ahead at this next Sunday, we're going to be in Psalm chapter 42. Chapter 42 has one of the most well-known verses in all the book of Psalms. You'll see that as soon as you read it. But a couple things to look out for as you're reading chapter 42. Look for a repeated phrase, and maybe read chapter 42 and 43 together. A lot of commentators think that those two were originally one song together, and that repeated phrase is also in chapter 43 as well. We'll also see some different emotions come up this week. There's kind of a drowning that's talked about. There's a depression and a discouragement, and a lot of things that I think we hear often in our culture today are brought out in this chapter. So read through that and begin those patterns in your life this week, come ready to learn more about lament. And just know that we are praying over you this week. We're praying over the laments that I know about. I'm praying over the laments I don't know about, just those hard moments in life. But I'm so thankful we have a God to turn to in the midst of those, and reasons to praise and trust Him because of it. So read that ahead of time, put those patterns in place, come ready to worship Him Sunday morning, and we'll see you there at 10 a.m. Thanks, church.